to you, but you know, Austin, down here on my sheet it says Austin Powers Hill. So I don't know what happened there, but I think it's Austin Hill, president of Zero Knowledge Systems. At age 26, Austin is already a veteran of the internet and business worlds. With the help of 200 dedicated freedom fighters, as I believe Zero Knowledge staff call themselves, Austin is currently building his third business in the area of privacy protection and identity management. Austin can always be found pushing the frontiers of technology. At age 17, he was advising corporations on how to prevent people, much like himself, from breaking into their systems. I was trying to remember what I was doing at the age of 17, and somehow leaving home just didn't cut it in comparison. At 21, Austin got into the ISP business just as the web was taking off, creating what became Canada's third largest ISP. It's an amazing accomplishment when you think about it. Today, he's merged his passion for technology with one of the most controversial and exciting areas of business, protecting consumers' privacy online. Along with his father and brother, Austin identified privacy as a serious business opportunity back in '97, working from the premise that empowering consumers and offering them complete privacy would become a valued service. Austin and his company are creating what they believe will be the future infrastructure for trust, authentication, privacy, and e-commerce. Their product Freedom, once installed, and it's, I believe there's a new version 1.1, which is very easy to install, runs very smoothly in the background, allowing you to surf the net, wrapped in a cloak of pseudonymity, if you will. In recent months, Zero Knowledge has hired some of the leading minds in cryptography and privacy. In addition to the world-renowned cryptographer Ian Goldberg, who has been with them for a while, they've also managed to nab the highly acclaimed Stephanie Perrin, who I am a great fan of. And she has been one of the chief advocates in our federal government's Bill C-6. So applause to Austin Hill.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to Toronto, to the 10th CFP. It's kind of amazing looking back to think about a decade. You know, this is 10 years. And in internet time, I actually went online, I found a calculator that calculates internet years versus real years. And it turns out 10 years is 4.9 trillion years in internet time. So that's been a long time. A lot has changed. I think both for better and for worse. And just to talk a little bit about where I was 10 years ago and how I got involved in the privacy space. It really was 10 years ago that we started seeing certain things that as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old started to capture my attention. There was a little operation called Operation Sun Devil. Many of you know about, and certainly I don't think we need to give a history lesson here, especially since I never went to history class. And you know, we started to see things like the EFF get born. Issues like Craig Niedorf being talked about and getting dragged into the court systems. The cypherpunks on the second issue of Wired magazine. All of a sudden, the issues of privacy and digital rights were one that were being talked about. And I know for myself, as a young person who really enjoyed computers and liked the idea of networks, I was absolutely captivated by the idea that, you know, we would have to fight for these digital rights, that technologies existed that would give us the ability to protect our rights. And so I started getting involved from a very personal point of view in watching these and reading some of the stuff online and very much caring about the world that we were creating. And I think a lot has happened over the last 10 years, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And before I do, I'm going to just read a little excerpt that came from a speech that John Gilmore gave at the first CFP. And the speech was entitled Privacy, Technology, and Open Society. Now, before anyone asks, I'm not infringing on the Digital Millennium Copyright Act here. John had the foresight to publish this public domain, so I think I'm in the clear. So this is reading from John. There's been a lot of talk here about privacy, but we haven't focused so much on why we want it. Privacy is a means. What is the real end we are looking for here? I submit that we are looking for increased tolerance. Society tolerates all kinds of different behavior, differences in religion, differences in political opinions, race, etc. But if your differences aren't accepted by the government or by other parts of society, you can still be tolerated if they simply don't know who you are different. Even a repressive government or a regressive individual can't persecute you if you look the same as everybody else. As George Perry said today, diversity is the comparative advantage of American society. And I think that's what privacy is really protecting. He then goes on to talk about, what if we could build a society where information was never collected? Where you could pay to rent a video without leaving your credit card number or bank number? Where you could prove you're certified to drive without giving your name? Where you could send and receive messages without revealing your physical location, like an electronic post office box? That's a society I want to build. I want to guarantee with physics and mathematics, not with laws, that we can give ourselves things like real privacy of personal communication. Encryption so strong that even the NSA can't break it. We already know how, but we're not applying it. We need better protocols for mobile communications that can't be tracked. We want real privacy of personal records. He goes on to talk about privacy for e-commerce. This was 10 years ago. When I looked back at this and I read it, I really thought, how far have we come? What has changed? I think there's been a lot of good changes, very positive. 10 years ago, when I read the first issue, second issue of Wired magazine, it talked about how Phil Zimmerman was being persecuted and pursued by the Department of Justice because PGP had been exported. This year, I was there when Phil Zimmerman legally sent a copy of PGP outside of the US, ending what has been decades of control on encryption technology. This is a very positive move. 10 years ago, privacy was a topic, I think, that was just focused at digerati, or academics, or politicians. Now privacy is something that you see in every major newspaper, daily, weekly. I actually did a small little check, and against some control terms like poverty and certain types of crime, privacy in the last 3 years has seen a 400% growth in media articles and reviews. Privacy is now a mainstream issue. 10 years ago, we saw huge investments in data mining and technologies that had no forethought or consideration for privacy. In the last 2 years, I've seen more than $200 million invested in companies who list privacy as their main mission. So things are changing. We've seen recently major advertising networks such as DoubleClick and Abacus back off because of public outcry. The world's largest software company, Microsoft, well, actually, I don't think they're the world's largest company anymore, but they've backed away from its practices with regards to unique identifiers because of the public outcry with regards to privacy. Even the US government, with some of its financial services bills, know your customer rules, has backed off because of public outcry for privacy. I think the people in this room and some of the people we talked about earlier who have been here over the last 10 years have all played a critical role in bringing this forward. We now see public companies are listing privacy concerns in their SEC filings as a risk to their business models. All of this is the change and showing how privacy is now being a key issue in our society. As Bruce mentioned, Bill C-6 passed yesterday. We've seen the Europeans pass very strong data privacy protection. We've even seen Hollywood take up the issue of privacy with movies such as Gattaca, and last week on West Wing, where a Supreme Court judge was, his nomination was bumped because he didn't believe in strong privacy protections. This is becoming an issue that isn't just for academics, not just for the people sitting in this room. This is something that every single citizen is becoming concerned about. I believe that going forward, privacy will be one of the most important issues of the next century. I believe it will be to the future what civil rights and environmentalism were to this century. And it will be something that we have to fight for at every step of the way. Now, when we look at this and look at going forward, one of the things I see and remains a very big concern is we are not building the type of society that John talked about 10 years ago. While there are very positive things, I also see very, very negative things. I'm going to start with talking about network designs. We're deploying networks now that build in tracking at every single point. Whether they're the easy pass car authentication systems where you can drive on the roads, whether it's your mobile network where most mobile phones, the future generation, are being deployed with GPS locators so that direct advertising can be sent to you as you're walking down the street. So let's imagine this world where I'm walking down my street with my phone. My car is enabled with the OnStar command system. Every time I turn the corner, I'm getting, "This pizza is available. 20% discount for you. We just saw you left the mall. Are you interested in going to a gift shop for wallpaper?" I don't want to live in that kind of society. I don't want to live in a world where every single one of my moves is tracked because I happen to want a cell phone, or I happen to enjoy getting directions from my car. Those are all very convenient things. Should I have to give up my privacy because I enjoy those conveniences? We're also seeing every single one of our devices being wired into the internet. Internet fridge was rolled out by GE this year. A lot of people said, how great. I've had a touchscreen on my fridge. I can order with Webvan. I can pull up my inventory of the groceries, and they've got a little barcode scanner to tell me what's in my fridge. I ask the question, who gets to know how much high-fat food is in my fridge? Who gets to know how fast I drink my beer? Is that everyone's business? Should that go on a network that has no provisions for privacy, no protections for the data that resides inside of that fridge? I also remain very fearful of what we're developing for digital ID systems. Public key infrastructure is being rolled out as a form of authentication. Let's give everyone digital certificates. Let's encode a whole bunch of information about them so they can prove who they are when they go online. We can stop e-commerce fraud. We can allow for voting online. All of these great systems. What very few people have asked is, what kind of system are we building? The current model acts as a unique identifier and a digital passport, so that every one of my activities is now authenticated and linked to my identity. Anytime I want to prove my age, I'm revealing all my other credentials as well. So we have now developed online what we couldn't do in the real world, which is a national ID card. Those are not the type of systems I want to see built. Identity theft becomes a very interesting thing in that world, where someone who obtains my digital certificate can now access everything in my life, because my healthcare records are online, my billing records are online, I do my banking, my stock trading. All my activities are on the internet, because darn, isn't that .com world convenient? I think we need to ask these questions. And ultimately, one of the big ones that still remains a very big battle, which was talked about yesterday, was how are we going to pay for things in the future? We see an increasing trend towards debit credit cards that include full traceability of every single transaction. So what I see happening is either every single time I want to pay for something, I leave a record and create a trail, or I have the choice of getting my free internet fridge, my free PC, and my free internet access in exchange for every single personal data I have. Will I start getting free McDonald's if I leave DNA samples at the door? These are the things that concern me, and these are the reasons why I think we are not done this battle at all. I think there is so much left to do, and I believe in the next 10 years, we will decide the foundation of how communications will evolve. We're right now relaying this infrastructure, rethinking a lot of the internet protocols. Things like IP version 6, digital certificates. Now people are thinking, how long can we build this for? 50, 100 years, the next century? If we do not build privacy into these protocols, if we do not support at an infrastructure level the privacy of our communications, our identity, and our commercial transactions, I believe privacy will be one of those things that we hear talked about, remember the good old days. It'll be something that's talked about in memories and old movies. And it will be something that most children will not grow up to enjoy or even realize that it was a potential. And that's certainly not the type of society I want to build, and I don't think anyone in this room does. We now have most of the tools. Most of the technologies that allow for privacy, allow for options, have been available since the early 80s. In the identification space, we can now have blinded credentials, whereby if I want to authenticate my age, I can do that without revealing any other data about my person. I can authenticate that I'm licensed to drive. by showing a credential that can be certified. It could be on a smart card, and it can be completely private. If I'm interested in learning where the best place for pizza is, I can simply publish that fact on an anonymous network and get the data back with regards to my location. The convenience and the benefits of all this internet technology can be seen while supporting privacy. There is no Faustian bargain that's required. We don't have to give up our data in exchange for access to the technology. But it takes effort, it takes concerted thought in designing these protocols to make sure we've done them right. And I don't think that's happened. We also have the abilities for electronic cash. Electronic cash has been around since the mid-'80s. The cryptographic means of doing this. We have yet to see it deployed in any meaningful fashion. These are all changes that need to happen. Since we do have the technology, I think what's required is a commitment. I think what is required is a focus on the process of designing protocols and engineering so that we can start to adopt privacy into these protocols and hold companies accountable who are not. I know at Zero Knowledge Systems we are very dedicated to this, and we've been working very hard to make sure these systems are available. And I know that there are other great companies that are working on the same thing. I do believe, though, that the next 5 years will be the deciding factor, because as far as we've come in the last decade, we are not there yet. And more of these systems are being built so that the idea of privacy can't be supported because the technology does not support it. So I'd like to invite you all to help us over the next 5 years as we try and do these things in asking these questions and applying the pressure, because we have come far in a decade. And when I look forward 10 years and I think about putting my children online, I want to make sure it's in a world that I enjoy the internet. And I enjoy the technology that got me into this in the first place, which is cool computers and a lot of freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the ICANN panel come on up?